A near end does not seem on the horizon for the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. This, as Israel says, it is still preparing for its ground invasion into Gaza. While world leaders are discussing and negotiating over the conflict, a consensus does not appear to be workable so far. Meanwhile, the human suffering continues, and in the latest, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry claims more than 7,000 Palestinians have been killed so far in the war, and the ministry's toll includes more than 2,700 minors and at least 1,500 women. Hamas has also released the names of those who have been killed. And on the other hand, Israeli jets continued flying over Gaza and last on Thursday after troops and tanks briefly raided the besieged enclave overnight. Speaking of the expected ground offensive, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant has said that it's not far off. He also said that Israel will carry out the operation when the conditions are right in order to strike Hamas. He also talked about tensions with Hezbollah on the border with Lebanon, and he said that Israel has no interest in expanding the war.
מלחמה בחזית הדרומית כנגד חמאס. אנחנו מוכנים לכל התפתחות בצפון. חיזבאללה סופג נפגעים רבים. יחד עם זה, אין לנו עניין להרחיב את המלחמה. היעד שלנו הוא ניצחון במלחמה והחזרתם של החטופים. התמרון יגיע ולא ירחק היום והוא יקרה. זה יקרה כאשר ייווצרו התנאים המתאימים על מנת להכות את ארגון החמאס, ולאחר שנשלים את משימתנו באש, כאשר הדבר הזה יקרה, אתם תראו אותו ותבינו את עוצמתו.
And while the defense minister said that Israel did conduct a military drill close to its border with Lebanon on Thursday, clashes with Iran-backed Hezbollah group have been frequent since the Israel-Hamas war broke out, where more than 40 Hezbollah militants have been killed in the borderlands so far, while Israel's military says at least 7 of its soldiers have been killed. Meanwhile, devastation from war continues in Gaza, which can be seen in the new satellite images that show the north of the Gaza Strip before and after Israeli strikes on 21st October. Hamas has meanwhile said at least 50 hostages held by the group have been killed so far. Group's armed wings say that these hostages have been killed in the continued Israeli strikes in Gaza. Speaking of hostages, a senior Qatari negotiator told in an interview that civilians being held hostages by Hamas in Gaza could be released within days. He also said that negotiations were very difficult, but progress was being made, and he cautioned, however, that any escalation in the conflict could jeopardize those efforts. Diplomacy and negotiations around the war continue, and now a senior Hamas delegation has traveled to Moscow to meet Russian foreign ministry officials, and this is the organization's first high-profile international visit since its October 7 attacks on Israel. Iranian deputy foreign minister is in Moscow as well, and the three leaders held a trilateral meet as per a picture posted by Hamas. EU leaders also met in Brussels on Thursday to discuss the situation in West Asia. In a declaration agreed at a summit, the leaders expressed the gravest concern for the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza. They called for pauses in the fighting so that humanitarian aid could enter Gaza, and debate on the war also continue at the United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly held an emergency meeting on Thursday to discuss this dire situation. After failed efforts at UNSC to adopt any resolution, representatives from Israel and Arab countries exchanged sharp accusations at the discussion in UNGA, showing no signs of consensus. In other updates, Pentagon says that about 900 additional U.S. troops are heading to West Asia to protect U.S. personnel amid a surge in attacks in the region by Iran-affiliated groups. And as tensions soar over the Israel-Hamas war, U.S. troops have been attacked at least 12 times in Iraq and 4 times in Syria in the past week. Pentagon said that U.S. forces were targeted earlier on Thursday in Iraq as well, but the attack failed. At least 24 American military personnel have been wounded in these attacks.
Saw through and then move, but don't.